what are you hungry for? What's going to scratch that satisfaction piece of nutrition while we're also scratching the nutrition side of filling your plate. So there's nutrition and then there's satisfaction. And if you're never thinking about the satisfaction and you're just eating chicken, broccoli, rice every day because you think that's healthy, that's not going to sustain those habits long term because you're going to get bored.
Welcome to the Spartan DEKA series on Spartan Up with Jarod Cogswell, Director of Sport, and Yancy Culp, Director of Programming.
Okay, team. Great guest today. My wife, Amy Culp, who is arguably one of the most well-respected registered dietitians walking the planet. From A to Z, we covered it all. Stay tuned.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Superbeats Heart Chews. Right now, you can get a free 30-day supply with your first purchase at superbeats.com/Spartan.
So Yank and I, last episode, we talked about ways to weaponize your fitness, and the big piece we left out was this piece, and I think this is a great follow-up, especially for when we talk about a life fueled by fitness. I want to know, your approach. How do you armor up your nutrition and weaponize your nutrition because for me, the energy level is so important, and I'm one of those guys, not like the past. I mean, I used to hit a Red Bull energy drink, in the mid-afternoon because I wanted to keep that energy just going throughout the whole day, right? And I don't do that. I don't have those big roller coaster rides during the day anymore, but I want to know, what are some of your secrets to weaponizing your nutrition during the day to keep your energy high? Because, you're not just a busy, business professional and helping everybody else on the planet there in Texas, but you're also a mom. You come home, you're the job never ends. What do you do to keep your energy at a high level when it comes to what you eat and drink?
Yeah. So I think, well, first, it's, as you mentioned earlier, it's going to be an individualized approach for people. But I'm going to say in general, the first thing that I look at whenever people are saying they struggle with their energy is going to be how frequently they're eating. Most of the time, what I see with, I would say, a good number of people, and I have to be careful about this myself because I have a busy morning, and sometimes I can walk out the door and say, "Oh, did I eat breakfast?" Right? And so it's the simple things that are hard, right? So it's small, frequent meals, limiting the simple sugars, but having adequate carbohydrates regularly throughout the day and balancing those with adequate fiber and protein, because those can help to stabilize your blood sugar. And so what I see with most people is that they backload their nutrition. They get the majority of their calories after lunch and on. And when we need the most amount of our energy, well, as a working professional and a parent, I need a sort of space throughout the day. But for a lot of people, they need, a good majority of their nutrition earlier in the day to help to fuel them. The other thing I see happen is that when people underfuel the first part of the day, then they find themselves not only overeating because they're over hungry. So it's like this pendulum that they get on, the undereating, overeating pendulum, and they end up overeating, or choosing things. The hungrier that you are, the harder it is to make healthful choices, right? So if you're starving when you're walking in the door, then you're going to be munching your way through the rest of the evening. And so I actually found myself doing that yesterday. I was so hungry when I got home. I killed it on the Peloton. I don't know if you saw that from my MEPS, but I showed Yancy yesterday. I was starving after that. And I found myself eating as I was making dinner, and I need to make sure, and I plan today, I'm going to have a snack before I leave campus after I work out, so that I don't fall into that trap again of not only feeling so tired, but also just so hungry that it makes it harder to make more healthful choices. So that's the other hard part. So not only knowing that you need small, frequent meals throughout the day, And for some people, it looks like 3 meals. 3 meals works great for them. For other people, it's smaller, more frequent meals. So you have to find out what works best for you, but balancing that carbohydrate with a little bit of protein or fiber or healthy fat. So you're balancing out the carb spike, helps to stabilize that a little bit. So that might look like an apple with some peanut butter, or that might look like a string cheese and some whole grain crackers, or that might look like a yogurt with some chia seeds in it or something like that. So it's just a little bit making sure that you're having a mix of those macronutrients to stabilize that blood sugar throughout the day.
Yeah, you got me thinking, especially when I go on long climbs, like I'm very aware and intentional about how I'm fueling my body, because I don't want to bonk, and I know Yancy's done that. Probably has this very similar approach when it comes to doing a big Spartan race or something like that. But, I don't know. I wrote this down because I think about this a lot, especially when it comes to this topic. But, we're all athletes. We're all athletes in this game called life. And every single day is game day. And if we're more intentional about what we're eating, maybe we're going to develop better habits, and we're going to feel better, not just physically, but, we know what it does for us mentally and emotionally as well. Yeah. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, you're right. Like you plan ahead what you're going to take on that mountain hike or on the Spartan race, or, we have nutrition for athletes during the games, but it's leading up to that that's even more important sometimes, right? And how you're preparing your body. And so if you're going into every single day unprepared, that's the biggest mistake I see people make, including myself. When I don't plan out our meals that we're going to have, if I don't plan out healthy snacks to have, if I don't cut up those veggies and have those in the fridge so they're ready for us whenever we get home, when we are and so hungry, or when we're needing a little snack, if that's not there, if I don't prepare, that saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And you just fall into then what are those comfort habits, or what's quick and easy. And again, the hungrier that you are, the harder it is. Like, oh yeah, let me cut up this bell pepper quick and eat it with some hummus. No, I'm going to go grab a handful of Cheez-Its. It's like what's the easiest thing to do is going to be the thing that you go back to. So you have to do a little bit of planning. On the other side of that, people feel intimidated because it's like, that takes so much time. I only have one day off. In the fall, I have sometimes half a day off. I don't even have a full day off. So it's like, I certainly don't want to spend that half a day cooking for the whole week. And so don't fall into the trap of it has to be all meal prepped, or it has to look a certain way in order to be healthy. Find simple little things that you can do to just insert, like I said, what is the nutrition that you can insert in there that can make tomorrow a little bit better, a little bit easier. And really sometimes in the fall, like I said, what my biggest thing is I'll sit down and, okay, what does my schedule look like? What are the nights we're going to eat out? What are the nights, we're probably going to pick something up after I get home late, and Yank's running the kids around to practices in the evenings. We're probably going to go buy, maybe get a sub sandwich that night. But these other nights, I'm going to be intentional about we're cooking those nights. And we're going to have the groceries ahead of time to cook, and we're going to, somebody might start it, or we might plan to eat a little bit later, so the kids need to have a snack. So it doesn't have to be all meal prepped for you to be successful. I think people fall into that fear of it's just like too hard. I see what people do on Instagram, and that just looks too hard because I can't do all of that meal prep, or I don't like leftovers, so I don't want to meal prep all my food, So find out what works best for you and what approach works best for you, and pick one or two things to start working on.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a little context to listeners and viewers. So when Amy talks about the fall, keep in mind she's overseeing on the female side and the male side every single athlete in every single sport, and working with all their coaches, all their trainers, strength and conditioning coaches. She's working with all of them. But it just so happens in the fall, as working with all these other sports, football comes along, and it's 7 days a week for weeks and weeks and months that Amy has her cot set up there at work sometimes.
Well, it's better now. It was definitely, I have an amazing staff that helps me here at UT, but it's just what other people have the same as, we know for us, that is a busy season at work for me.
Yep.
You know, and so that's what people have to kind of think about. What is realistic for me? So our food in the fall will sometimes look different than it does when I have a little bit more time to cook in the spring, because we know that like I love cooking. Yancy doesn't so much, right? And so we know that about ourselves. And so that's what going back to what's important to you. Everyone's nutrition is going to look a little bit different, but do what works best for you. That might mean those meal prep companies, and that's what you want to use because you don't enjoy grocery cooking and you don't enjoy meal planning. And if you have the opportunity to do something like that, if you can't afford that, find simple recipes online and a few of them, and get great at making those and get a little bit more comfortable in the kitchen. So figuring out sort of what is the barrier to meeting your goals? What is the thing that's getting in the way for you? Right? So that's what I usually work on most with people is what is the thing that's getting in the way of that thing that you're doing this for? So go back to your why. Why are you doing this? Okay. You had a week of, food journaling, and you had a week in the day in the life. We talked through all of that. What was the thing that got in the way for you? Was it skipping breakfast? Was it not being prepared with meals in the evening? Was it not knowing what to do for snacks and running out of energy throughout the day? So finding out, what is the barrier for you to get to that goal that you're trying to get to?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Let's satiate some of the athletes listening right now. Let's do a deep dive into athlete fueling. On our side, the Spartans, the functional fitness athletes, when you think about DEKA, the CrossFit athletes, and your athletes, talk about, because this is the most common question I get as a coach, like, tell me what to do. And oh, by the way, Amy always says you can't out supplement a poor diet. Mm-hmm. They also say, tell me exactly what to do with my diet, but also give me those 3 or 4 go-to supplements that like you're crazy if you're not taking those as a high level athlete. So take us down that journey.
Okay. Yeah. And the cool thing about nutrition and sports nutrition is that it's a science and an art. And so an important part of my job is staying in the science and staying in the evidence and what is the latest thing, because at Texas, we pride ourselves in being world-class. And so my job is to make sure I'm providing the information that our athletes need to stay world-class. And so what are the newest and best things to do for that, to optimize their performance and their nutrition? The hard part about that too is that it's sort of it's a science in its infancy, and it's sort of always changing. And we know that it's there's an individualized approach to that. And so what's fun for me is that, working with a team, even if you work with a team, you're going to have different positions within that team that have different needs, right? It's based on your position, based on what your goals are. But I would say first and foremost, what we've been talking about this whole time is identifying what your habits are and what might be getting in the way of that. And then, so have that baseline of healthy habits. And then I start to build up on that pyramid. And so then we can individualize your sports performance nutrition. So from there, from sort of those basic healthy habits of, are your meals balanced, and are you getting in all your macronutrients that you're needing? And for the different teams and different sports, those macronutrients look a little bit different, and for their individual goals. And so from that, then I usually book in the pre and post workout. So I'll start looking at, are they optimizing what they need to get in for pre-workout, for post-workout, and then if their workouts are an hour or longer, intra-workout nutrition. And so start looking at, are they fueling well from that perspective? And I can't give one approach because it's going to look different for everybody, but I would say most people fall prey to sort of, again, what's popular out there. And unfortunately, what's popular out there right now, like, keto, low carb, that kind of stuff does not align with high sports performance. We know that from, research that you have to have carbs to fuel your workouts. And so looking at, are they getting enough carbohydrate at the right times? And sometimes it's easiest to look at that pre and post workout time so they can optimize their fueling and their recovery. So those are kind of the things that I'll look at first is, the baseline of their sports performance nutrition, their pre-workout, their recovery nutrition. I'll look at then and then their intra-workout nutrition. And then do they have any specific goals that they're trying to achieve? If they're trying to gain some lean muscle mass, what are some nutritional changes we can do for that? Whether it's, again, optimizing their protein intake throughout the day, optimizing their recovery nutrition. A lot of times what I see people do is, getting plenty of protein in, but not getting enough carbohydrate to fuel the workout. So then their body's just using the protein, trying to use the protein as a fuel source instead of using carbohydrate as a fuel source. And then we can eventually look at supplementation. For our athletes, we check vitamin D status, and we supplement based on what their labs are. I usually like to tell people to go ahead and check that vitamin D status before you start to supplement, because it is a fat soluble vitamin. So you kind of want to know what your levels are before you start to supplement. So we have a protocol that we used for that. We also check iron status for our athletes, because we know that's important for sports performance. So we'll educate them on adequacy of iron, but we check their ferritin levels and make sure that that's optimized. Then we look at omega-3 intake, and often we'll supplement athletes with omega-3 because we know it's not only helpful for recovery, but it's important for brain health. And there's some interesting research looking at concussion recovery around optimizing omega-3. So we look at those that intake with our athletes, and we'll supplement there. And then from there, just so we're a little limited on what we can provide based on what the NCAA says, but there's some great, or what the NCAA rules are, but there's great research to support creatine for sports performance. That's not something we can provide, so we'll guide our athletes on how to purchase that safely. Nitrates is something that we do utilize with our athletes because it comes from a food source, so we can guide them through when and where to use nitrates, potentially beta-alanine. Again, that's not something we can provide for our athletes, but it is something that athletes can take for themselves. But that is the benefit of having dietitians cover those different teams, because based on the sport, then that is going to inform the appropriate supplementation for those athletes. But again, if I have an athlete text me saying they're wanting to gain weight, I'm not going to say, okay, start taking creatine first as my first recommendation. I'm going to first assess what they're doing with their nutrition. And then I think creatine could be an awesome supplement to a great diet.
Yeah. Awesome, Amy.
We'll be right back to this interview, but first, a quick word from today's sponsor, SuperBeets Heart Chews. As we age, fatigue, and lack of endurance, it's not something we can fix with more and more caffeine. Here's a new way to start your day. SuperBeets Heart Chews. They're a tasty treat. They give you the energy you need, and they're good for you. No more afternoon coffee or energy drinks. And don't fall for the idea that candy would be a quick pick-me-up. Add 2 delicious plant-based SuperBeets Heart Chews to your morning routine, and you'll be promoting heart-healthy energy for your day. No caffeine crash. Because SuperBeets Heart Chews' unique, clinically researched grapeseed extract promotes heart-healthy energy and normal blood pressure as part of a healthy lifestyle. In fact, the grapeseed extract used in SuperBeets Heart Chews has been clinically shown to be 2 times as effective at supporting normal blood pressure as a healthy lifestyle alone. So do more for your heart and treat yourself with SuperBeets Heart Chews. Get free shipping and returns, a 90-day money-back guarantee, and right now, for Spartan Up listeners, you can get a free 30-day supply with your first purchase at superbeets.com/Spartan. That's superbeets.com/Spartan.
I think about you working with all those amazing athletes at the University of Texas in every sport. I mean, basically, you're part of building machines there. I mean, when we talk about, Yancy always uses the term the beautiful machine. There's a lot of machines at the University of Texas, and
it's really fun.
It's almost like mad science, to make sure that people are performing at their optimal level.
Yeah, it's really fun too because when I started here as a consultant, so I would come in one day a week. I had my private practice. I would come in one day a week and do, talks with the teams or do individual consultations. Now being full-time though, and having a staff of dietitians, what's really fun is we have our Texas Athletics Nutrition Center, And just like at home, when we're teaching our kids about nutrition, it starts in the kitchen. Our nutrition center is like our learning lab, and that's where we can do a lot of application. And so I'm not just talking to them in the office about how to change their nutrition. I'm showing them how to apply it. So if it's a pre-practice meal, so if lunch is before a 3:00 swim practice, that plate's going to look really different than if it's a post-practice swim dinner. They're coming in and recovering after swim practice, but they already got their recovery at the pool, their shake and that kind of thing. That plate's going to look different based on what they had for lunch. That's what's fun to teach them, is if I'm calculating the grams of carbohydrate for you and I'm telling you what that needs to be for pre and post, but then I can show you in the nutrition center how you build that out on your plate. And there's literally thousands of different ways that you can do that because of all the different food that's in there. That's what's fun about nutrition. It's because you can learn this. It doesn't have to just be grilled chicken, broccoli, and rice, right? It can be, maybe tonight it's a wrap, or it's a bowl, or it's something from the hotline, or it's a stir fry, or it's a pasta. So learning how all those foods can fit based on what your goals are and what you're hungry for and what you need for recovery and how your body's feeling. And how, as what you have, I always use this analogy. I don't remember if you remember, Chuck Davidson used to always say, like, what do you have a taste for? Whenever we were looking for somewhere to go out to eat for a meal, what do you have a taste for? It's a great way of like, what are you hungry for? What's gonna scratch that satisfaction piece of nutrition while we're also scratching the nutrition side of filling your plate. So there's nutrition and then there's satisfaction. And if you're never thinking about the satisfaction and you're just eating chicken, broccoli, rice every day because you think that's healthy, that's not going to sustain those habits long term because you're going to get bored. You're not ever filling up that satisfaction piece of the strategies of nutrition. It's, first we got to look at adequacy, balance, variety, moderation, satisfaction. All of those things go into, that's why whenever you say just moderate your intake, it's much more than that, right?
Yeah, you reminded me of one of our past guests, Kevin Curry, the owner and founder of Fit Men Cook, and he's really creative in the kitchen. I know you guys, what I've heard is you guys are collaborating together, and man, I'm anxious to hear more about this. Is this something that you can share a little bit with us?
Probably not yet on a podcast. Maybe when you come see us this weekend, I'll give you the scoop. Kevin and I, yeah. So I followed him honestly for a while. When I started here at UT, I thought, man, he has such great ideas for how to cook healthful foods in a way that tastes delicious, and you don't have to sacrifice taste, flavor, but it's really practical and simple and not a lot of ingredients. And that's where a lot of my athletes need to start. I don't want to overwhelm them with a lot of ingredients and a lot of different recipes. And so he had a lot of, it was just a tool that I used to show my athletes, here's some great ideas. And then I had the opportunity, like I just sort of said, one of these days I'm going to meet him and I'm going to have him come and talk to our athletes. And so when I heard he was on your podcast, I said, you have to tell him that I want him to come to UT. Thankfully, he's also a Longhorn, so that helps too. He's an alum. So he was excited to come down, and we met, and we have some ideas of some things that we can do to really help the community, because not everyone has, sort of the resources that Texas has to have a full staff of dietitians. Doesn't mean that other places don't think that nutrition isn't important. And so, or parents, that are struggling with some of the things that we're talking about. They have athletes at home. They're not really sure sort of how to guide them. And so we're thinking about some things to sort of help make things more applicable for those, the population of parents, and really, like we were talking about earlier, we're all athletes in our own lives. We're all high performers, and I agree with you that you don't have to just step on a track at the collegiate level to be a high performer. We're all high performers in our lives that we want to live. And like I said earlier, I want to be a high performer at my job every day here at Texas. And I want to be a high performer at home as a wife and as a parent. And I want to be a high performer as a friend, and so looking at the things that are pulling from that energy and what are the things that are life-giving. And nutrition can be one of those things. Is it yes, is it providing joy for you? But is the only thing that you're thinking about is that sort of that instant gratification with it? And if so, how can you sort of start to make some of those changes to improve it slowly over time?
We had a question come in from one of all three of our favorite people on the planet. She just happens to be an RD as well, and arguably one of the greatest functional fitness / OCR athletes walking the planet as well, Kalina Coffin. And you've kind of already touched on this, but she said, ask Amy to talk about, as a high performance athlete, the pitfalls of when you mentioned, the low carb, the keto, the pitfalls of like, I've heard it from a few people or a few articles that, you need to cut your carbs way down. Dive into that again for all the athletes out there listening. And as Jarod said, we're all athletes, but how that can be a dangerous pitfall.
Yeah, I mean, just the evidence. I mean, if you understand sports performance or exercise physiology, and you know what fuels a working muscle, it makes sense that you need carbohydrates. But on the other side of that, where is this gaining popularity, and why do people, if that's the truth, then why are people even curious about this or want to do this? And I would say it probably goes to that other end of the spectrum is, are there people that eat, too many carbohydrates in their day or too much refined carbohydrate in their day? Yes. What I always tell my athletes at UT, and what I would tell athletes that I work with in the OCR community that are working out at a high level, is a lot of the messaging that you hear sort of in the world about too much carbohydrate or cutting back on sugar, cutting back on carbohydrates is not intended for an elite athlete. That's intended for somebody, again, that's not paying attention to the nutrition in their day, and maybe they are consuming too many refined carbohydrates or going towards those simple, everything that comes in a crinkly package, right? So helping them to identify, okay, let's work on increasing some lean proteins and vegetables and some whole grains into your life. There's also the school of thinking of, the training low and how to adapt and how to be more efficient at burning fat as a fuel source, because there's more of it in our body. And so if you're an endurance athlete and you're out for a 2 or 3 hour run or an adventure race, then I want to be more efficient at burning fat as a fuel source. Also, people fall into the trap of, hey, I'm trying to lose body fat, so I'm going to burn my fat off. Why can't I just figure out a way to do that, right, more efficiently? I would say there's a small percentage of people that sometimes I would work with that had a really difficult time from a GI perspective, that were doing endurance races of tolerating the simple carbohydrates. And so figuring out a way for them to be more efficient and not needing as much carbohydrate, but to still perform at that high level. Those are really the ones that I would see, that I would work with on that very specialized sort of path. But that is a pretty small number. The majority of people, and what Corinne is talking about, are sort of falling into this trap of sort of what's popular right now. Popular doesn't necessarily mean sports performance. But whenever you look at the evidence for this, we see that people do not perform as fast for as long with a lower training low or with that lower carbohydrate intake as somebody who is fueling adequately, getting adequate carbohydrates in to support their sports performance. They're outperforming the lower carbohydrate intake. So as a dietitian, my job is to assess why somebody would want to be doing that, right? So if it's like, oh man, I just can't tolerate that much carbohydrate when I'm on my 4-hour endurance race, like I have diarrhea and I can't do it, right? Well, that's slowing you down. So let's figure out a solution for you. But if it's like, hey, I've heard keto is a way for me to lose weight and I want to be more keto adapted, I'm going to dig into that a little bit more and explain the science to them a little bit more and see how they feel by fueling with adequate carbohydrates and not being afraid of carbohydrates, right? See if they're trying to lose weight, looking at the habits that are, again, might be contributing to if any weight gain is happening. Most of the time it's not from overconsumption of carbohydrates during their 4-hour workout. That's not typically where it's coming from.
Well, Amy, I wrote a bunch of notes from this, and I'm excited about this to share with Adina. And I think this has been just an awesome educational forum when it comes to nutrition and the approach and the mindset. It's fun, and I think, when you look at science, sometimes science isn't fun, but the way you just described and we're able to communicate all of this, I think this is going to be really good stuff for our listeners, to even review and listen back to. And, it's obviously very special to have you on the show here, especially with Yank.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I know. His name's Yancy. I know. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Hey, we got to come up with one. I want to finish with one little fun nugget here.
Uh-oh.
Give me your favorite moment, or maybe a couple moments, of working with a high-level collegiate and/or professional athlete, or maybe it's one of the teams. Like, give us one of your favorite memories.
That's hard, because it really is the best job in the country. I think one of my favorite memories is, one of my favorite things is when athletes come back after they've left. And maybe they're an athlete that is pro right now, or maybe they're an athlete that's a pro in their lives, right? And they're not, performing on the field or the court or the track or whatever, but they come back and they say, I may have not been paying attention then, but man, I was paying attention, because thank you for everything you taught me. Knowing that it made an impact on them, not only here, but they remember the things and they can apply the things. I had some athletes reach out to me last summer who were, looking to sort of get back on track with their nutrition, and were looking for that advice, and, thinking to reach out to me, or coming back and recognizing all of the awesome resources that they have here, and how we sort of made that easier for them of applying their nutrition while they're here. And it's harder out in the real world, but they're equipped with this knowledge and with this information that doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it, and it can be really, really fun. That's what I love about Kevin. He makes it really fun and makes it applicable. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the most rewarding. I mean, we had a get together with some athletes one year, and those athletes coming and sort of reminiscing on memories whenever I was looking back at that time of like, man, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to build this program. I hardly remember it, but they have the memories of, the knowledge that they learned and all the new things that we applied. So I think that's probably one of the most rewarding things, is that piece, but also when you see it click for somebody and they feel better and they perform better. And nutrition, I mean, it's going to make you, 1% to 2% better if you're already a super elite athlete. That can be quite a bit, when you're a super elite athlete. But I'm not going to be the one who's winning and losing. These incredible athletes are the ones that are winning and losing. These incredible coaches are the ones that are winning and losing. I'm not calling the plays, right? But knowing that I'm a part of something bigger is really special and really fun. And whenever you see them sort of click and make those changes, or if I helped an athlete that was struggling with disordered eating feel more confident in their nutrition and start feeling better, and then they feel better and they start to recognize, diet culture messages and start to say that doesn't work for me. That's not correct information. Just empowering them. That's the most fun. I took the job because I wanted to build a program. That has been so rewarding and fun to have the support to do that here at Texas, to be able to build something from the ground up and to have an amazing staff that loves what they do, and to be able to see them to do that on a daily basis. And it's not just me. That's really fun. And then for my kids to be able to experience being a part of Texas athletics it's really special. There's a lot of sacrifices that we make as a family because of my schedule, but to know that they have memories, that are just pretty amazing to be a part of. That's the sort of icing on the cake for our family, I think.
Well, you're impacting a lot of lives, Amy Culp, and
Lucky to
and
do
your
it.
husband does the same. And again, appreciate your time and just your knowledge, your experience, everything you just shared with us. This was a treat. I'm looking forward to seeing you over the next few days.
Yeah.
And obviously being in the DEKA arena in Austin, Texas, and
I'm excited for you guys.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
Thanks for having me.
And come on, man, you gotta come up with a nice conclusion here. You got a special guest.
Thank you, babe. I had little nervous butterflies going on for this one. You guys probably didn't tell, but I took like 15 little snapshots. Oh, we were rolling here. I got that forever.
Thanks for having me.
It's an amazing topic. We could go on for. I've had the wonderful opportunity to go on and talk about it for 20 plus years with this amazing woman. So I feel blessed that we had the wonderful opportunity for her to be able to share her expertise with our wonderful community, the Spartans, the DEKAs, and everybody that listens. Thank you. My wonderful, beautiful wife. I love you big.
Proud of you guys. This is amazing.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Spartan Up. Do you want to be ready for anything? Download Joe's free ebook at spartan.com/readyforanything. Do you know someone who needs a little help staying motivated, staying informed, getting or staying mentally and physically resilient? We're here 3 days every week with a mix of content to help you stay strong, from mindset to nutrition and everything in between. Listen every Tuesday to hear Joe DeSena, Spartan Race founder and CEO, and the rest of the week, join us for DEKA, Endurance, and Classic episodes. See you next time. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Superbeats Heart Chews. Right now, you can get a free 30-day supply with your first purchase at superbeats.com/Spartan.